Welcome back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D., this year's Boston Marathon is just about 3 weeks away, and while many folks are preparing for this year's race, of course, understandably, a lot of people are still focused on what happened last year. Well, there is now going to be a memorial to honor those who died in last year's bombings that killed 3 people and 260 others were injured. Soon after the tragedy, mourners began leaving thousands of items at a makeshift memorial near the finish line to honor the victims of those attacks. Some left teddy bears, signs, and marathon bibs, while others draped running sneakers to commemorate those killed or injured. Now, to mark the anniversary of the bombings, the material that was collected from that makeshift memorial will be on display in an exhibit called Dear Boston, Messages from the Marathon Memorial. It will be hosted by the Boston Public Library from April 7th through May 11th.
John, that certainly is a poignant and altogether appropriate memorial. And joining us now, Skyping in from Boston to talk about this and politics of the day, the hour, and the year, our good friend, WRKO talk show host and Boston Herald columnist, Howie Carr. Howie, it's good to have you back from a sleeting New England there, much further to our north. Before we get to the memorial for the marathon, politics we cannot stay away from. Howie, your most recent column deals with Scott Brown switching states to run for the U.S. Senate, and the title was, "Hey, Scott, it's time." Distill this down for us. Give us your take on Scott Brown and his time of deliberation before making it official there in New Hampshire.
I wouldn't quite say he's as bad as Hamlet, but he's getting there, J.D. You know, a couple of weeks ago he announced, well, I'm forming a committee to explore my options. And now this last week he's been going around on a what do you call it? A listening tour of the state of New Hampshire, most of which involves trips to bar rooms with his wife, and it's just getting a little coy for him to be out for him to not be saying that he's in the race. He actually bumped into his opponent yesterday, Jeanne Shaheen, at an event, and they had some cool but cordial exchanges of greetings. But I think it's time for him to get in. She's already started to do opposition research. She's testing out various themes. One of the Sununu brothers, as you know, John Sununu used to be the senator. His father, John Sununu Sr., was the governor. One of the other Sununu brothers was cold called by the Shaheen campaign. And they asked, what do you think about these issues? And among the issues they're testing are, J.D., these will be familiar to you, the Koch brothers.
Oh.
That's really an original one, isn't it?
So they're already out. Now, this is interesting. That's called in the business push polling. And when conservatives or Republicans do that, Howie, that's evil. But that's not been, I trust, aside from a guy like you who tell it like it is, push polling is just opposition research for the other side, for Jeanne Shaheen to be doing it, and just happening to call one of the Sununu kids. It's kind of curious, I would say.
Yeah, I think it was curious. Well, you know, yesterday she was using some of Elizabeth Warren's talking points from 2012, especially about Scott Brown is getting all this Wall Street money. Well, now, I don't know about Jeanne Shaheen, but when Elizabeth Warren was making that charge 2 years ago, she was actually the beneficiary of much more Wall Street money than Scott Brown was. But, you know, hey, never let the facts get in the way of a good attack point, right?
Yeah, one last question before we move on to the Marathon Memorial. At what point does this really start to hurt Scott Brown? Everybody knows he's running, I guess, and the only surprise here would be if he came out and said he's not going to run. Yeah. So, you know, I know folks up there don't like people to play coy with him. When does it start to hurt him not being out there officially?
I think he's got to do it pretty soon, John. You know, the thing is, it really, the weather here has been terrible this winter, and everybody's just waiting for it to break and get spring. And once spring breaks here in New England, nobody's going to be paying any attention to politics for a good couple of months. You know, like you say, today is opening day of the Red Sox. It's people are want to get out, and they don't want to think about this. I think he's got to do it pretty soon. I think one of the reasons he's waiting is that he wants to try to put together a campaign team. I don't think he was too happy with the Mitt Romney crowd that in Massachusetts that lost him, or that they ran a losing race anyway in 2012. He wants to get a lot of Kelly Ayotte's people on board because they have a winning race relatively recently under their belts.
Howie, have to ask you, we saw that the memorial is coming up for the marathon coming at mid-month. Boston still trying to come to grips with the terror attack on soil in the heart of Beantown at the biggest event of the year. Boston still enraged by this act of terror, or is the Globe still trying to cop a plea for the terrorists?
They'll never give up, JD. They'll always. I forgot to tell you last week that this guy Tamerlane, the Globe has twice called him a stay-at-home dad, a stay-at-home dad. But you know, I think that the people are just sort of waiting for the trial to begin, probably sometime this summer, if not later. I don't know if you saw it, but the defense team, which of course we're all paying for as federal taxpayers, they have now filed motions asking the government to produce any documents saying that they were trying to recruit Tamerlane as an informant, because that would show he's the primary instigator. But you know, I don't know what would that mean, JD and John, if he's the primary instigator. I mean, if you're the getaway driver on a bank robbery, they shoot some people, the other guys in the gang shoot some people inside, you're just as guilty of murder as the guys who pulled the trigger.
Yeah, it would seem to mean very little, Howie. I mean, you know, kind of compare this with us for what you know. I mean, you obviously have those great books about the Whitey Bulger case. Tell us if there's any comparison here with that.
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned last week that that it had recently come out that when they found these, they did a great job getting the pictures of the two Sarniev brothers out of all the millions of frames that they had to go through. So before they released them to the public, and that's where they were identified, they showed them around to all the law enforcement, and including the FBI. And two FBI agents had actually interviewed Tamerlane, who we call Speed Bump because he was run over by his brother, and they had interviewed Speed Bump for 2 or 3 hours earlier in the year. And they were shown the pictures, these two FBI agents. They had no idea.
Ah, just, you know, makes you slap your forehead and ask why. And Howie, thanks for being with us. We'll get to you again here on America's Forum. Always great to check in with Howie, even when he delivers that kind of information.
And it's got to be frustrating. Your comments always invited. Tweet us what you have to say at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum.